Polish refugees in England. Now the Poles, got caught between the Russians and the Germans, of course, but they were technologically highly advanced, and many of you know the story of the Polish mathematicians who did the original work on decrypting the Enigma transmissions, and they were the foundation for what the British did at Bletchley Park. And the Poles also put these radios together, and they were very, very good radios. As you can see, it's very compact, and these were actually used by the British Secret Service. The Poles designed them, and then they were built and used by the British Secret Service, which would have been MI6. And incidentally, these are images from the British Vintage Wireless Society. Now here again, this is a couple of this is a different radio, I believe, but this is what it looks like in a suitcase. So you could carry this around. It looked like you could look like a businessman and not be particularly suspicious looking. Now let's talk a little bit about what we mean in terms of spy radios. There's a difference between what, say, the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, or the British SOE, which is the Special Operations Executive, what they were doing, and what MI6 or military intelligence, secret intelligence service, or the CIA to some extent later, what they were doing. The operations guys, the OSS and the SOE, they're out blowing things up and killing people. That's their job. Sometimes it's to prepare for the invasion, sometimes it's just harassment, but that's what they did throughout the Second World War in Europe. The spies, on the other hand, the last thing that they want is somebody in the neighborhood blowing things up. They want everything to be very, very quiet and very, very unremarkable. They don't want people blowing things up, and they don't want people killing people. And the people who are running the spies were always in conflict with the people who are running the operations. Because the operations, we want to blow up the railroad station, we want to blow up the bridge. Well, wait a minute, we've got a guy who's observing the trains and is giving us phenomenal information on what's going to the Eastern Front, and if you blow up the bridge, they're going to get him. It's, it's just not going to work that way. So there's this tension going on between the actual spies who'd be using some of these radios and the saboteur types, the operational types, who are also using some of these radios. And it's an unresolved tension. And to this day, it's an unresolved tension. And the problem is that the covert actions can undercut intelligence gathering. And so it becomes a policy balance between the value of the intelligence and the value of the covert actions. And it's a very difficult balance to work. Now here's a very, very famous SOE radio, which is the so-called Paraset. It's very compact. You could obviously put this in a suitcase. It's a transceiver. It's a splendid little box, and there are a few of these around. But there are now people who are building these from scratch. So there are replica Parasets that are used on the amateur radio bands, and I'm sure it's great fun to build a 1942 Paraset and get it up on 80 meters and talk to your friends in Germany with it. Now this is a real classic. This is the Special Operations Executive, SOE, and this is the Type 3 Make 2, and this is the tuning coil. This is a meter, of course. It doesn't really show too well here. I'll have to do something about the contrast, but anyway, this is the nameplate on it, and this was the crystal. So it's crystal controlled operation. This is a cover photo on the BBWS year 2000 magazine, and it's a little clearer in the photo, so I'll work on that. But this is the classic one. This can still be. These are still around. Not many of them, but there are some. There are still some around. Again, this is the same Type 3 Make 2, and you can get a little bit better idea what. Here's where the coil would go right here. And this is in the suitcase configuration. Now, as I said, this is the special operations executive, and what Churchill said to them was, set Europe ablaze. And that's, you know, that's great from an operational point of view, but very annoying to the spies. All right, here's a better color picture. So this, it's in a wooden box. It's not a suitcase, but it's in a wooden box. And you can see, again, this is where the coils go up here. Your meter, tuning, so your crystal would go here. So this is one of the better photos of this particular set. Now here's one that I was unaware of. But I'll tell you, in England, there was a set called the MCR, which stood for Modular Clandestine Receiver. Is Alan Carter here by any chance?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Alan's got one. So if you want to crawl on your knees up his steps in Croydon, he may even show it to you. It's one of the most wonderful little modular receivers that you can imagine. But the Germans had one too. And that's interesting because this may be what they talk about in evolution as convergence, where, you know, people sort of, you know, animals sort of start looking like each other if they do roughly the same sort of thing. Or it may be a matter of copying. I'm sure many of you have seen the Gibson Girl lifeboat transmitter. So it's a kind of yellow box, and you'd sit there, you squeeze the thing together with your knees, you'd strap it, you'd crank it, and it would put out an SOS on 500 kilohertz. And there may be one in the museum. I don't know. Ed, does the museum have a Gibson Girl? Yeah. All right, well, it turns out that the Gibson Girl was copied directly from the German equivalent, because during the early days of the Battle of Britain, the German planes would go down, and the guy would be in his life raft and be cranking away, waiting for the Luftwaffe to come rescue him, and the British would get him and say, hey, this is a really neat radio, why don't we make these? And so they did. And so that's why there's Gibson Girls, because we copied it from the Germans. Now, I don't know, I have no information whatsoever, whether the MCR was copied from the Germans or whether the Germans copied the MCR. Because once you've captured one of these things, hey, that's a great idea, let's do it. And so that's, you know, it could easily have happened that way. Or it could have been, as I said, convergence. It's sort of the thing that would naturally evolve on both sides of the Second World War to get smaller and smaller, more effective radios. And this is from a collection that's also on the internet, LA6NCA. So you can just check it out. This is the transmitter module. Here's the key. So can we go back one? Yeah, here's the key. So what we're looking at in terms of dials and whatnot are on the back side, so you can't see them from here, but here's the key. All right, let's go forward. Yeah, so here's the dials and whatnot for the transmitter. All right, let's go. And here is here's the insides. Now again, notice what we have here is we have these nice metal tubes. Now these are German metal tubes, and they're kind of more compact. But they certainly have a lot of advantages in terms of, well, they don't break. Well, I suppose they break, but not nearly as easily as glass tubes. So they're more solid, they're more reliable throughout. Now here's the under chassis of the receiver. Now here's this now has been restored by this fellow, and he's got a new power tube in it. And this is the answer to how you get from 3/4 of a watt to 8 to 10 watts. You need a power tube, just like we saw in the Czech radio. So you need a power tube. Once you've got the power tube, you've got the 8 or 10 watts that you need. And you don't really need much more than that, given the sensitivity of the receivers and the effectiveness of the antennas that you hope will be listening to you.